future is here. You now have the power to unlock the secrets of the hobby. An innovation that will change the way the industry works. The game changer is here. Card Ladder.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Conversations with Chris. This is episode 10 of Conversation with Chris, and I'm thrilled today to be here with Adam, aka the Real 27 Guy. You can find him on Instagram at the Real 27 Guy, and if you do discover him through that medium, you will be greeted by his bio. And the bio is, quote, husband, father, private equity, Utah Jazz, that's a topic I need to add to our discussion quickly, and 30-year basketball card collector, followed by a link to something called the Basketball Card Podcast. If you click that link, it's going to take you to iTunes, and you will be brought to what is, to my knowledge, the original hobby basketball-related content. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. I would presume that much of the audience already knows Adam, but if you don't, one of the absolute collectors at the forefront of the basketball card hobby, and he has been for many, many years. So with that said, I'd like to welcome Adam to the show. How are you doing, Adam?
Chris, I'm so good. I do need to let your listeners kind of behind the curtain real quick, in that we're recording this. It's about 10:20 my time, and you and I spent a solid 45 minutes on the phone before we started recording, talking about cards. So that should probably let everybody know really just how ridiculous we are.
Well, if there was ever any doubt before, it's been cleared up now. It's great to have you on, man. Not our first encounter, though. I mean, we've chatted cards for years online. Then we met in Los Angeles in person at the Bullpen. We met a handful of great collectors and connections when we were there. But now finally making some content together. Do you remember that? Do you remember that day in LA when we went to the Bullpen?
Dude, of course I remember it. I remember meeting. I probably remember meeting about 5 or 6 different people there who I've known online. But yeah, I came to the card shop that night so that I could meet you and Brian and Christina, and we just got talking about cards, and I only had 15 minutes, and I had my family waiting for me, and so I had to go. But the Bullpen is a sweet shop with a really cool group of people there, and yeah, dude, I'm sure I remember. I totally remember it. It was awesome.
Hopefully the next in-person card meetup, hopefully it's sooner than this, but at a minimum it would be at the next national. That would be great. And the next one, since this year's has been canceled, is Chicago, right? Next summer.
That's right. Yeah. And hopefully we do get to meet there. Hopefully, the world is in a place at that point where we can. But if not, I know that Brian, Christina, and Chris go on their road trips every now and then. Actually, I don't know if Brian ever comes with you guys. Is it just you and Christina?
Brian is not crazy enough to do that. It's just me and Christina.
Well, if you ever come through Salt Lake, definitely come on by. And I know you guys check out shops. I actually don't go to any of my local card stores. I feel more connected to people who are not in Utah than people who are, which is weird. But if you guys ever go on a road trip, I'll find out which card shops are here in the valley and send you to them, and hopefully they're good.
Oh, thank you. That would be great. I know you've had a few great collector guests over the years. I do look forward because obviously when we met up in LA, neither of us had our collections with us. So it would be great to swap war stories over collection sharing. I think that would be a lot of fun. Here's the first thing I want to talk about, man. I want to talk about the Basketball Card Podcast. And you know, when I came back to the hobby in 2016, at that time I was already a consumer of podcasts on any topic that I was interested in. You know, I would seek out content, especially in podcast form, to consume as much of it as possible, to learn, to absorb it, to fall asleep listening to it, just to completely immerse myself in it. And much to my delight, I was able to find your podcast, which was the only one on the topic of basketball cards. And that kind of gives you a little insight, the audience, in it, for those who weren't around in 2016, as to the state of the hobby in 2016, especially from a content creation perspective. And I know that the Basketball Card Podcast was well listened to, and it was popular among basketball card collectors, but it was a labor of love. So I want you to talk, if you would, a little bit about what it was like making. Tell us a little bit about the origin of Basketball Card Podcast, and then what it was like making content during that era.
Man, good question. Let me just start out by saying that, like you, I've kind of been a lover of podcasts and of the medium for a number of years. I have a job where some percentage of the time, not the majority of the time, but some amount of my day, most days, I can just I can listen to whatever I want while I'm working. And so, in different stages of my career, I've listened to hours of podcasts a day. I was kind of sitting there one day and I realized, man, how in the world is there not a podcast devoted to basketball cards? There's podcasts devoted to everything. I sure wish there was something. And like, I have no experience at all in, making, making something like a podcast. I had no idea what to do or how to do it. So I basically started Google searching, what do I do? And I figure out what you have to do. And it seems like it should be really easy for those people out there who haven't made a podcast. You would think, oh, maybe it'll just be as easy as recording a video and putting it on YouTube. But there are a number of steps that you have to do. And you have to, it took a while to figure it out. And I posted it, and my first few episodes, I think, were viewed or listened to 30 or 40 times total. And I didn't know how to publicize it because there wasn't Instagram at the time either. And there weren't Facebook groups. So I was just recording. And then what I would do, I'm kind of ashamed to admit this, but then what I would do is try to figure out ways that I could work the podcast into talking about it on Blowout cards. Because I thought, if I can talk about the podcast on Blowout, then people will know it exists. And then maybe I could get people to actually listen to what I'm saying. So I tried that. It didn't really work super well, but I tried to get people to listen to it. And I engaged with, after doing, I think I did 28 episodes. After doing those episodes, I got a number of people to engage. That's where you and I kind of first connected. I should mention, this is the sort of collector that I think of when I think of you. And out of those first 12 months of recording episodes, I think I had 2 people leave a rating on my podcast, because people don't leave ratings. That's a very intentional, deliberate thing that somebody does to say thank you. And I had 2 people, I think, who left ratings, and one was my friend who now runs the Pack the Future podcast, Chad, and you were the other one. So when you say it was a labor of love, there was nobody who was saying thank you. There was nobody who was saying, hey, I'm really grateful that you're recording this. You weren't allowed to talk about it on Blowout like you are now. You weren't able, it wasn't a thing. And so I had a lot of fun with it. I did my best, but I had a change in my career, and things got busy. And I had, I've got 3 kids. I had another kid around that time, and I had to kind of abandon it. And then for the next few years, I watched guys like you and Josh and others jump into it and have such success. And I was just green with envy the whole time. I was just like, man, I'm the guy who thought of this. Like, I should be able to be the guy who's like seeing the rewards of this. And so I was super jealous. So I started it again, and it's been fun kind of recording it again and having some conversational pieces. And it just gives you a great way of being able to explain yourself to the masses in a way where they can feel your words. They can feel like they know you. And the other thing that I'll tell you about it is, and this is something that I'm sure you recognize too. When you record a podcast and people like hear who you really are and they hear what you really think, then later they reference those thoughts and feelings. And especially when you meet them, that's really cool. Like when I went to the National last year, I had a couple people who were like, dude, Adam, I know you. I've heard your podcast and I remember your podcast on this and I love that. And that feeling, even if it's just for only a few people, is really like, that's a really cool feeling.
That's awesome. It is nice to see, the hobby, lot of serious and busy professionals like yourself populate the hobby. And so it even to take 5 minutes to leave an iTunes review, a thoughtful one, yeah, that might be 5 minutes that they don't spend with their family or something like that. It's like time is always at a premium when it comes to, people interacting in the hobby. And it is, I love to hear when people will take the time out of their day to thank you. I've always been a proponent of what I call just recognizing excellence as an end in and of itself. If you see somebody doing something excellent, chances are that maybe they haven't been acknowledged, or even if they have, it never hurts to be the second or the next person to acknowledge it. Like even when I would sit in, I just graduated law school at the ripe age of 33. And so like one of the little pieces of wisdom I picked up is if I saw a professor give like a terrific lecture, I would go up to the professor afterwards and I would say, hey, I thought you gave a great lecture. And there's no point to me saying this other than just to say that, like, I thought you did an excellent job. And I think our world is a better place when people acknowledge excellence. And so I just want to like echo that. I love people in the hobby do tend to be generous with that, especially like now when podcasts and content is more prevalent, when people just, say, nice job, Adam, and thank you for bringing back the podcast, or, in my instance, thank you for starting it in the first place. I'm thrilled to hear that others do that too, because there's a lot of people out there who are thinking it. Just a brief follow-up on the Basketball Card podcast. Since you've been back, you've made some definitive podcasts on certain topics. Like one of them is 2012 Prism basketball. For anybody kind of looking for a reference guide or an intro to that set, you've made the definitive podcast on it, in my view. And then you also, since you've been back now, you've collaborated with the great Dr. James Beckett, who, we might say you are a bit of a scholar of Beckett basketball magazines. You even have the Beckett Bites segments on the occasional episode of the Basketball Card podcast. So how has it been for you coming back now to making content, to collaborating with, the godfather of basketball card content, Dr. James Beckett, and, making some really influential episodes since your return? How has this experience been on the second go round?
Yeah, it's been really different than the first one. You're asking another great question, Chris. I think it's just really rewarding. If you look back at like the last 10 episodes or so, the thing that's really fun for me, and this is what's great about podcasts, is there's no rules, right? I don't have sponsors who require that I do a certain thing. If I skip a week or if I skip two, it's fine. I might have listeners every once in a while who are like, hey, you haven't made something in a while. Are you going to do it? And in fact, that actually makes you feel better than anything, is when people realize you're not recording. But it's just really rewarding. When I've talked to, I'll give you a couple of examples. I liked doing the 2012 Prism one because I feel like there's data out there that isn't as well understood. And Dr. Beckett talks about how education in the hobby is so vital. And I know you feel the same way, and I do too. It's hard. It's something that we really struggle with, to both educate and not be somebody who's pumping their own cards. And, it's weird because you don't want to talk about the thing you don't collect. So, you don't want to talk about the thing you collect, but you collect the thing that you collect because you like it and because you have a passion for it. So it creates this really hard situation where you want to talk about everything and you want to show your real passion about it, but you also don't want to be accused of anything wrong. And so I tried to walk that line with the 2012 Prism thing. And I'm not passionate about all things 2012 Prism, but some of my very best cards are from that set. And so, I like talking about it. But then other episodes, like I did an episode with my old boss, Jeff, and he is somebody who's been a figure in my life. His name's, or his Instagram handle is When It Was a Hobby. He's been somebody who's been a really instrumental person in my life and meaningful. And he's just kind of getting back into the hobby now. And so to have him on and to be able to talk about some different things was interesting. And then, of course, talking to Jim Beckett. I mean, yeah, like the reason that I look at those old Becketts and draw from them is because, what's the saying about those who don't remember history are condemned to, or I don't remember what it is, but I think most listeners kind of know that quote. Like, we have in front of us some, in our past, guides that are easily accessible that teach us some things, and we can see what's happened between. I've got one right next to me right here right now. If I open my June 1995 Beckett with Sean Kemp on the front, then I compare it to where we are 25 years later, there's things that we can learn from this. And, cards, the basketball card hobby has been around for 30 something years, in full flux. And, it's had all sorts of waves, and some of us have been here for all of them. And that, there are going to be people who come in who believe that they know best, and they might know things in the short term, and they may get things right that I don't get right. And I may be unwilling to take some of the risks that they're unwilling to take. But I believe that understanding all of history gives you the very best sort of skill set and knowledge to be able to continue in the hobby for the long run.
Very interesting. Yeah, man, we could go down the rabbit hole of learning from prior cycles to inform this cycle. Let me just go on it. Let me have one question on that topic, and then I want to move on. So we've seen parts of the market get remade this year, and the example that comes to mind to me, and that will probably resonate with at least some of this audience, is how Michael Jordan cards, the hierarchy was at least temporarily inverted. And what I mean by that is basically what happened was when The Last Dance began, and even before it began, when the hype for it began in the hobby, new collectors, especially because we were at a moment in time when league play had been suspended and there was a lot of uncertainty about when professional sports would resume, people brought the logic of their collecting era to the Michael Jordan card market, which is predominated by 90s cards. And the first thing that we saw happen was base cards, especially high grade, in particular PSA 10 copies of base cards, absolutely soared in value. And one of the most striking instances of this was the 1997 Metal Universe base card once was only a fraction of the price of the 1997 Metal Universe Planet Metal insert. And by the time Last Dance Mania had hit its peak, the base card was worth more than the insert in the same grade. And so that's what I mean. We had seen an inversion of the market where the base card, according to the traditional Jordan collecting perspective, was at the bottom of the hierarchy, and the inserts were up top. And by the time that we had fully absorbed the influx of new people into Michael Jordan collecting, base cards had at least for a moment in time there sat atop the Jordan hierarchy, both in terms of like rate of growth, but also in some instances in terms of just value, period. Like the 1996 Chrome is another instance. That base PSA 10 card is now, around a $3,000 card. It was like a few $100 last summer. And that's that one has sustained. So, we've seen, just total market inversions. And so that I'm inspired to think about that by the fact that you were sort of reflecting on there's certain things we can learn from previous cycles. But the thing is, this year I've had to revise the things that I thought I knew were sort of laws or fundamentals of the hobby. They change when the participants in the market and their tastes and preferences change. The hobby is a social construct, and when the people who comprise the social part of that construct change, the whole hobby can change. So what do you think about that? How much can we learn from the past, and how amenable should we be to things changing as new market participants enter into the hobby?
I think you're smart to think about I think you're smart to think about a lot of those things. But the thing that I'm thinking of in particular right now is how you talked about how there's laws of the hobby that are true. And I think it's good to think of laws as more of like general rules, and maybe long term they're always right. But in pockets here and there in the history of the hobby, they not only are not right, but sometimes they seem like they're opposites. And so, like you, I have some real strong beliefs as to things that I believe are true in the long term. And one thing that I really believe is true in the long term is that rarity really matters. But how to determine whether something is rare is interesting, because I'll give you an example. You gave the example, and that's the 97, 98 metal MJ card. That card is really important because of what the green one sold for, because of how sought after the red one is, and because you've talked about here on your podcast how you even argue that the base card that has all those colors has something that those other ones don't have, which I think is admirable of you because you have a red one. But I think that card really is important. And so when Nat goes and spends a ton of money on the red one, it makes, or sorry, on the green one, I think that everybody then goes, like lots of people in the market go, I want something that's like that. I want something that's similar to that, or and they think, maybe this will increase in value because that one's worth so much money. And so they go out and they go want to buy it. And lots of people have lots of different reasons for wanting to buy that card, right? But the thing is, not all of those cards that were produced back in 97, 98 are available for sale. A lot of them have been thrown away. A lot of them are sitting in collections. And people don't even know they have the card. And so, you look on eBay, and at any given time, there might be like 5 or 10 on eBay. Well, that seems like it's pretty rare, because that seems to, to some people, not to you and to me, but to some people who are maybe newer in the hobby, as like, wow, like that's the supply. That's the total outstanding shares of a stock, or in this case, that's the total outstanding number of cards that are available for sale. And it just takes a few people who are really going after that, and then people start talking about it, and all of a sudden you have a situation where something that isn't very rare in reality is selling for a lot more money. But we've seen with that card that was temporary. And actually, we've seen some ups and downs on that card over the course of the last couple of years. It had an upswing, before that. It might have even been like 5 years ago when the 1 of 100 green sold publicly. That might be when we first saw a bump of the base, but it has moved up and down, and it will continue to move up and down. And I think that, when something like that is strong, it's obviously really good for the hobby, but the laws of supply and demand are undefeated. And although we have something kind of unique in the market today, when we compare the market from today to 30 years ago, and that is that people can buy hundreds of the same card, and people have the capital to really invest in a block of the outstanding shares or outstanding cards of a specific run. In the end, there has to be somebody who wants to own it. And that's why rarity will always matter in the long run. It will always, always, always matter. And that's in the long run. But you and I and everybody else who's been collecting this last 6 months has seen lots of reasons why in the short term, other things happen. And so when those other things happen, you have a fear of missing out. You would like to make money. I would like to make money, and it becomes tempting. And I've seen that happen, not like this last 6 months. This last 6 months has been an amazing time in the hobby, where we've seen this happen more on a higher level than ever before. But when it comes to the long term, a card that there's 10,000 of isn't going to be worth as much as a card that there's less of, except for in some very rare circumstances. And I even hate putting that qualifier comment on the end there, because they really are rare circumstances. Most of the time, it's the rare thing that has the value in the end. It's not the really common one. So I think your question's a good one. When you think about what happened with all of the Jordans, and when you think about what's happened with all of this sort of, I don't want to talk down to anything that anybody's collecting, but it's kind of like, actually I'll reference something. I listened to a podcast today with your partner and one of our good friends, Josh. And he had Adam Lefkoe on his show. And Adam talked about, Adam's a fairly new collector. He talked about how he had this card that he really wanted to show other people, and it was like a Prism base 10 of Damian Lillard. And he was showing it to people, and he realized real quick that everyone was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool," but everyone knows what that card is, right? And Adam realized real quick, I don't know if I want that, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, and I hope I don't here, but Adam I think what he was trying to get at is, he didn't want to just own something that everybody knew what it was and everybody could have, and anybody could have one at any given time. He wanted to own something that was really cool, that had a chase to it, that other people really wanted. That's what's great about the hobby, when you have a chase, when you have something that's hard to find, and you locate it and you acquire it, and there's a million other people who want it. That's one of the great parts of the hobby. And I think that's, in the long term, something that you're always going to want over something that anybody can have.
Indeed. Okay, I'm going to have to leave that there for now so we can move on to the next topic. But a terrific amount of wisdom to digest there. And great plug, too, of Josh and Adam Lefkoe's episode on YouTube on the Cardboard Chronicles channel. Really a terrific episode. And if I may editorialize for a moment, Adam's entry, so many great Adams in the hobby, Adam Lefkoe's entry into the hobby, and the intelligence and the passion that he's bringing, even in the relatively short period of time he's been involved, is great. And I love to see how thoughtfully he's approaching the hobby, and he's going to be a force to be reckoned with as time goes on in the hobby. So, okay, next topic here. I want to talk about the top 100 countdown that you do. It is a feat of great discipline. It you and boldness and originality. You first started doing this in the context of Blowout, using that medium to share your top 100 cards, but it's so much more than sharing your top 100 cards. Like, you do share them, but each one comes with its own novella, and or at least numerous paragraphs explaining various things about the card. Maybe it talks about how you acquired it. Maybe it talks about why it's important to the hobby. Maybe it talks about why it's important to you. Maybe it's all three. Maybe it talks about the provenance of the card. Lots of fun, great, coffee table content, coffee table book content. That idea is actually coming to me right now, but it would be so cool if you did that one of these times. But so you have this top 100, and at first it was published through Blowout forum posts that would get tens of thousands of views and or more, and now you've taken it to Instagram, and so it requires a discipline to, a card a day or however, you space it out, but you do it, and you literally do 100 cards, and you've organized them. So you already have a good idea of what the top 100 is going to look like before you even start. And then day after day, you edit video overviews and pictures, and you make it a very entertaining. You even made a trailer for it this year, which was hilarious and fun and awesome. And so a lot of effort and work goes into this, and it all pays off as you get down to the end. And we're all kind of, especially those of us who kind of know what the final cards in consideration are, we're all waiting to see how they'll be ranked and where they'll end up. And so before we get into some of the specifics, and that I wanted to wait until the list had been completed before we did this, but before we get into some of the, hey, here's a top 5 and how did you do it? Before we do that, talk a little bit about the inspiration behind this, and talk about how hard it is to do this, because I haven't seen any, you're constantly encouraging people to do this. I think people think it's a fun idea and they would like to do it, but it is hard to do. It requires a lot of follow through. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody do it. And I definitely have never seen anybody do it as well as you. So how do you do it? And maybe if somebody else is thinking about doing it, how would you advise them to do it properly?
Well, I don't know that I'm a very good, model citizen as far as like how much I think about cards and how I value them, because I see other people who were able to flip their collections faster and make more money, and I see people who are who I think a lot of people would think are far more successful at cards than I am. But for better or for worse, I have an extremely obsessive, fanatical sort of feeling towards cards. I like it when people talk about how cards make them feel, and I like it when somebody can talk about why they like their card as much as they do. Even on Instagram today, where I think most of the people who are there are super positive, most of the commentary around cards is very surfacey. And, I don't mean the subgrade surfacey. I mean, people think about different things. They think about value, and I'm way more obsessive than the average collector is around why something is in my collection. And I allow myself to kind of go to a place where I ask myself, why does this need to be in my collection? Why is it that I have spent the number of dollars that I've spent on this, or why am I not willing to sell it for a certain amount of money? And it's really easy and tempting to just go to the, what's it worth sort of question. But, I don't really do that. I think about, like, I'll give you an example. Somewhere in the 80s or 90s this year, I have a Bill Russell bookmark. It's not even actually a card, but it's graded by PSA, so it kind of takes on the some of the attributes of a card. And this isn't something I'm ever going to sell, so people can think I'm pumping if they want to, but I want to talk about this one, and you'll understand why. Like, this card, from a historical perspective, is the last bookmark that the National Basketball Hall of Fame ever made, and in reality, it was the last bookmark that they ever made because Bill Russell was the first Black athlete, or the first Black member of the Hall of Fame. He didn't come and take his his Hall of Fame ring, and that story is well documented. But we actually have, through cardboard, through something graded by PSA, sort of like evidence of what the world was like back in 1974. And if you were to look at this bookmark, what you would probably see is that the back is blank, that the front isn't in color. It's in blue, and I think it's blue and white is the whole card. It's blue. It's just blue and white. But like, from a historical perspective, it's really interesting. And I've taken the last 2 minutes of the episode to talk about that card, but that really just gives you a taste of why it's important to my collection. I have no idea what it's worth. I don't have a clue, but I do my best to say, where do I think this falls in terms of the hierarchy of value in my collection? And I do my best to say, what do I think that the world values this at? But I look at that card and think, it is so important compared to how other people value it that there's no chance I would ever sell it, right? Because there's a million things that I would sell ahead of it that are worth more, but are less significant. So that's kind of where the list has ended up in August of 2020. But where it started was, I was not in the middle of my busy season. I had a little bit of time, and I wanted to do something cool. So 3 years ago, I said, I'm just going to start doing this. And like you said, I did it on the Blowout forums, and I had a lot of people who were like, Adam, this is one of the coolest threads that we've ever read. And I don't know, maybe they were just trying to make me feel good, but I felt like a real connection with a lot of people through doing that. You hit on something else that I think is really, that I'll address real quick. And that is that, you talk about, I forget the word that you used, but like, it's not easy in a lot of ways to open yourself up to criticism. And when you do something like this, you do open yourself up to criticism. And I think some people just believe that it's like all positive that you get from it, but it's not. And, you have people kind of like, man, what is wrong with you? Why do you spend so much time doing this? Or why, and I kind of get the sense of what some people feel about it, that it's just a big, it's just a big pump and dump or whatever. But it really is all about like it's about expressing yourself. And when I was 9 years old, I liked showing off my cards. And now I'm, in my older 30s, and I still like showing off my cards. And as you've pointed out before, Chris, you can post a card once to Instagram. If you do it again, you kind of feel like, you're doing something wrong. But if you have a list, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the way that you put it, I think it was kind of like what, okay, good, you're showing off the same card again. What's the point? But for me, like, the list gives me an excuse to go back and to say, okay, why do I care about this? Because as we're changing our collections all the time, because most of us aren't, totally wealthy, and I'm definitely not totally wealthy. We have to make hard decisions sometimes about which cards that we love have to leave our collections. And creating the list allows me to sort of remember what I had and where it was, as well as it allows me to keep a really good stock of my inventory. It allows me to not be a hoarder, but to really limit things. It does so many things that are super positive. So it started as something kind of silly, but it's developed into something for me that is important. And I don't know if I'll do it again next year. My wife's kind of like, I don't know if you need to do that again, but I just really like doing it. And so I don't know. We'll see what happens next year.
Very interesting. I went and while you were talking, I found the Russell so I could visualize it while you're describing it. I implore the audience to do the same. It's number 80. If I've identified the right card, and this would be a hard one to miss the way you described it with the blue tints, the bookmark, and you have a write up on it that lines up with what you just said. So I believe it was number 80 on the top 100, and very cool. Only 12 graded, indeed. Cool video too. You even showed the pop report from PSA. The thing too about doing something like this, I don't even want to put what I do in the same category as what you do, because it's not nearly as well thought out or planned out. But like, I like to make a post about a card every now and again that I own, and try to do something creative with it, do something more than just post the card and say, hey, isn't this cool? Or like, happy to add this. And there's nothing wrong with that either. But I'm just, maybe it's vanity that I just like to make these long-winded posts about why I like my card. But like you said, it resonates with people, and they like it and they encourage it. And because we all have that, right? Like I think actually my favorite part of the hobby right now, and there's a lot to love about this hobby, my favorite part of the hobby these days is making that post where I try to take a really crisp picture of her, and I'll put some light filters on it, turn up the contrast, make it look really cool, make it look as beautiful in the image as I consider it to be when I look at it, and then make this thoughtful post about it, and then share it, and then like see people enjoy the post. And it's a creative exercise. It's a form of connecting with people. Then people will encourage you and boost you up for doing it, which is even more fun. Like, I think that's literally my favorite activity in the hobby to do right now, is to make a post like that every now and again. So I totally get it.
Can I jump in and say something else?
Yes.
Follow up
yes.
real quick. So, you remind me of a couple of things, and I think one of the things that I'd say about this is those types of posts that other people make are really like what I'm drawn to. And what's funny is there's no correlation between something that's like uber high end and this sort of like love of cardboard, right? So some of my very favorite people and some of my very favorite posts in posters in the hobby are not people who are selling super high end cards. The guys that are selling, that have the giant, 6-figure cards left and right, like those are the people who get all the attention. And I understand why. But like for me, I love it when people have real passion around things that are not necessarily the highest end, which I think is interesting to think of, like what it would be like if we were all like that. What if we all just really cared about the passion, and what if that's what resonated with us? The interesting thing is that that's not how we are. We for two different reasons. One is we definitely reward those people who have the high end things, and we flock to them. Those people get more attention. They get more, they get more fans, for lack of a better word. So that's one reason why. The other reason escaped my mind, because as usual, I'm thinking about 20 things at once, and I lost it, but maybe I'll remember in a bit.
Well, that's a great, dude. I have the same issue. As we've been talking, I have now accumulated 2 pages of notes, which is actually low. I just jot down things. Like I've jotted down here. I really like when you said the laws of supply and demand are undefeated. Rarity matters, right? Like that's my trick. Is I jot down notes. Because there's so many tangents that we can go on with this hobby. Can
I jump in?
I don't know if anybody's adopted that technique yet as well or not, but it really works. It really, just having the pen and paper handy can help the mind jump from topic to topic.
Let me jump in and tell you the other thing, because I remembered. Thank you for stalling for me for a second. I think I think that some people don't like the passion. I think that some people want to think of this as like, I think some people like want to think of this as just a sort of transactional sort of hobby, but it's not, right? I think some people want to think about this as like, well, like, this is just about, just about making money, or not just about making money. I don't know how to exactly say what I'm trying to right now, but I think people are uncomfortable sometimes with passion, but not most of us. Like, I think most of us are really like, are drawn to it. There's a guy, I'm sure he listens to your podcast. I'll mention him. There's a guy, I think his name's Midwest Vintage Cards or Midwest Cards or something like that.
Oh yeah. Yes, sir. Yes,
And like,
sir. Well,
he really cares like about like, and I know it, and I don't even know him. I shouldn't admit this. I can't remember his first name off the top of my head. I can't remember his IG right off the top, but like, I see the way he thinks, the way that he posts, the way that he's like sort of dealing with things, and it really resonates with me. And I think that's the way that it is for a lot of us. I think you're that way, Chris. But the thing that I found this on the forums, and I found this in other places, is some people don't want anything to do with like this whole, like, that person cares or their passion or whatever. They just want to think about it from a transactional perspective. And that's what resonates to them. And to those people, I think that somebody like me, who's like both willing to sort of take chances and being like vulnerable when I put things out there, and willing to sort of really say why things matter, like, those people will kind of look at me as somebody who's trying to influence the value of what I have. And the problem with that is there's really no way you can tell. You can't tell if somebody's in this market to try to make money, or if somebody's in this market because they really care. You just have to trust your gut with people, but sometimes we end up being wrong. And I guess that's probably all I want to say about that.
Well, it's a very interesting point. I'd never heard it put that way. I'd never thought of it quite in those terms. And as I'm embracing the topic for the first time, I think it's right. There is a reluctance among at least some segments of the hobby to see this as anything other than, as transactions, as trading stocks, and so that's not a perfect metaphor, but to use the metaphor to make the next point, it would be absurd to describe the beauty or the historical importance of a stock certificate or like a company's logo or something like that.
Yeah, you're right.
So perhaps similarly, it strikes them as absurd to describe like where a card would sit in like the progression of artistic and manufacturing techniques in the lineage of sports cards, which which is a really interesting point, and it makes me feel weird in the sense that, like, we've on the House of Jordans have dedicated multiple episodes literally to just expounding on the different artistic dimensions of sports cards that we enjoy. But the thing is, one of my hobby philosophies is that the collector mindset is the one that will steer you right, ironically enough, from a financial perspective. And the reason why I think that is because I'm always trying to figure out what the fundamentals are that enable the sports card market to do what it does. And I think like the key fundamental is that these items are collectible, that they're actually that they have intrinsic value. Like, I used to read things sometimes on forums, and people would describe cards as having no intrinsic value. And people can use that word differently. It sort of means different things in different contexts. But I did a double take the first time I read that. I was like, what do you mean cards have no intrinsic value? Cards have eternal intrinsic value. They are these on a psychological level. They are connections to childhood and nostalgia. Like especially when it comes to, like the Jordan aspect of collecting. And even if you're doing prospecting or something like that, they enable you access and a status within a community of people when you collect cards. And that's not even to mention the artistic dimensions of cards that a lot of us really enjoy, and a lot of us feel like is an under discussed aspect of cards is the artistry and the artwork that goes into these designs, and how these designs are actually, many of them are quite brilliant. And the alternatives could have been much worse, but these cards actually turned out to be brilliant. And then, we like Josh did an interview with one of the minds behind Arena Design, and we discovered that they were taking inspiration from people like Andy Warhol. And then it just becomes so satisfying to think about the fact that sports cards actually might have a place in modern popular art, in fact. And like that becomes very exciting and definitely lends an intrinsic value to cards. And then there's just the entertainment value and the connection to athletes that we have when we collect cards, and it enhances our ability to consume sports. And like all these things to me are like these are like the cornerstones of the intrinsic value of cards. But I'm reading people saying like cards have no intrinsic value, and that was just an astonishing thing to read. But I think you actually put your finger on it, that people are seeing cards as transactional, as stock is purely stocks for players, and I'm not against that. I think seeing cards as sort of stocks for players makes a lot of sense, and it grants permission to invest in players, to invest in legacies. It enables the opportunity to like really connect with sports on a level. So like I think this cards as stocks metaphors works, but the question that the transactional person has to answer is, well, why do cards have value in the first place? Like, what is it that lets us all agree that we believe that we will pay X amount of money for a card? And if the answer to that isn't that these things have intrinsic value and that collectors want to own them, and that it improves people's lives in some way, in a way that's measurable by dollars, that it improves their lives by having these cards in their possession, if that's not the answer to why cards have value, then what is the answer? I don't, at that point, I stop getting it. And then the market suddenly becomes a very mysterious entity to me. So I just said a lot of things right there. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think we should go back and record your last like 6 or 7 minutes and make it its own podcast, because no, seriously, I think that I just think you've got a wonderful perspective. But I'll say a couple of things. When you think about things the way that you're thinking about them, you get to a point when you really think deeply about a lot of these things where you ask questions like, why is currency worth something? And why is art worth something? And when you ask those questions, it's easy to like go down a really long rabbit hole and to come out on the other end like, kind of like you felt in your intro to philosophy class when you were in high school or when you're in college, right? Like you like come out seeing the world in a different way. And I think that's pretty healthy. And I think that it allows us to sort of dream a little bit and to think about things differently. And that dreaming and thinking about things differently is largely why I probably got kind of to the market of some of the things that I bought earlier than some people did. I've had chances along the way to make a lot of money, to sell things for a lot of money. And the very best decisions that I've made have been to not sell those things. And, if you were to have told 25-year-old Adam that version of Adam probably wouldn't have believed you. But you have to go down the path that you just went down. the other thing that I thought of while you were talking is, if you entirely remove the art aspect, which is probably the aspect that I'm weakest on when I think about the different aspects of why cards are worth something. But you instead, you just remove the artistic component completely. What you could do is you could compare cards to a game that is still being played by tens of millions of people all over the world, a game called Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go is a game where you take your phone and you search around for little guys, some of which you don't know what their names are, some of which you've never seen before, but you're interested in finding these guys, or to use your word, collecting these guys. And people spend hours and days and so much time of their lives looking for these little guys, especially the really rare ones. They risk their lives by sometimes being on the game while they're driving. They go on long hikes and do crazy things to acquire a little bit of electronic code of a rare thing that it just exists out there. And if that's not an expression of value, I don't know what is. And that's not something that's tangible. And that's not something that there's necessarily a market for. And that's not something that you can just go buy on eBay. And that's something that could be replicated millions of times over again. And instead, what we collect is something that's none of those things, and has infinitely more appeal to it, and has the artistic part that you just talked about. And so, if I could just go back in time, I would just go back and say to myself, like keep that perspective. Remember those things. And think about those things when you think about what a card could be in the future. Because if I would have gone into it with that perspective, I think I would have avoided some of the pitfalls, and I wouldn't have listened to some of the people who I did listen to along the way, who sent me in the wrong direction. I would have ended up in a place where I would have had more of the cards that I really wanted, and would have seen them for what they were, for being the chase that they were, for being historically important, and for being personally meaningful. And so, anyway, that's my most philosophical that I can get to sort of respond to yours.
No, I love it. I love it. A lot of food for thought there. Good stuff, man. All right. I need to usher this along. Let me ask you, I want to dive so deep into the top 100, but I'm just going to have to cut to the bottom line question here. It's really focused on the top three. So for those who haven't seen it, spoiler alert, it is out there when people have had time to consume it. Number 3 is on your top 100 list is the 97-98 PMG Metal Universe Championship, Michael Jordan, which is serial number to 50, and this is a BGS 9. Number 2 is the 98-99 Molten Metal Fusion Gold Parallel, BGS 9. That card is numbered to 40. And the number 1 card is a new addition to the collection this year. In fact, I remember it well when you acquired the card, and it was extremely exciting, and then it graded extremely well. And that is the 2012-13 Prism Gold Kobe, numbered 1 of 10, serial numbered 1 of 10, and it graded BGS 9.5 with premium subs. So how in the world were you able to rank these 3 cards, and what is your thoughts reflecting now on this ranking system and how it all played out?
Well, as soon as I rank some cards, I know that I got them wrong. Let me lead with that. There was a card this year that I posted. It's in the top 10. And after I posted it, a good friend messaged me and said, "You got this one wrong. And if you wanted to sell it right now, I would give you X." And I said, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Yes, I would give you this amount." right now. And I said, I think you're right. I think I got it wrong. But it's because, and this is, guys, this is what's fun. Like when you have cards that are important, but also don't have historic, like there's no way to determine a value. Like there's literally no way. That's awesome. And to me, that those types of cards have a lot of appeal when they're both historically significant and ultra rare. There's just nothing better than that. So just know that as I talk about these top three right now, that I'm always like really going back and forth. And you and I, we talked beforehand about how I was going to rank these things, and I know you could sense that I had like a real like sort of turmoil over like how to rank these three cards. But let me quickly, because I'm always long-winded, let me try to more quickly go through why I ranked them the way that I did. My number 2 and number 3 cards, if I just look at the highest offer I've gotten for either one of them, they're the exact same number. And so on that metric alone, they're tied. If I was to ask a lot of really smart people, the really smart people would tell me that my number 3 card is better than my number 2 card. And I like them both really a lot. Like I've ranked, in the first year that I did it, I ranked the card that I ranked number 3 this year, the PMG, above the Fusion Gold. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with doing that. I think that really smart people think that. But when we talk about 90s cards, one of the things that we have to be really aware of is that there's a lot of fakes out there. And unfortunately, it may actually be my most valuable card, my number 3 card. That card is a card that has been successfully faked, to where we believe that even some of them have ended up in Beckett and PSA holders. Mine, anybody would tell you this, but mine's not fake. I have a history of where it was, that goes back to about 2000 to at least 2006. That's it. I know at least back that far, but probably farther than that, actually, probably back closer to 2000. The card is unquestionably real. So, why would I penalize it for that? Well, there are cards out there of the same card that have been successfully faked. And I can't ignore that. What if somebody was able to successfully fake them, 20 or 30 times over again? In reality, there's probably only 15 of them in the world that are still, or maybe 20, I don't know, maybe higher than that. But I would guess probably 15 or 20 that are real, that are known, and it's historically important. And so from that perspective, it would be easy to put it even as number 1. But the number 2 card is, in my opinion, a card that is rarer, right? It's from the same era. It's stunning. The Gold Fusion card incorporates I don't know what you call it, but like the laser sort of pinhole technology that gives you Jordan's image. Again, in gold, and we're in an age of gold and cardboard. People love gold. And the serial number is die cut into the card. And it's not a card. I don't know anything about faking cards, but I can't imagine that is a card that could be replicated the same way that the PMG has been. And so for me, the fact that my highest offer on them has been the same, combined with the fact that I believe that it's not replicable or close to replicable, plus I think that visually it's at least on par, and by serial number alone, it's at least 10 rarer. And last thing, as far as pure insert cards go, it's the rarest Michael Jordan pure insert card. I just give the nod to it over the PMG. And I know that, probably 70% of the people out there will disagree with me on it, but that's why I got the Jordan Fusion Gold as number 2. Do you want to, is there anything you want to ask about that before I go on to number 1, Chris? I know I was a little bit long-winded.
No, that's great. I just marvel at how much care and thought went into that decision. And it's really nice to and it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's calming, or it's pleasant to see that you deliberated so carefully over this, and that you took up a number of different items and issues, and reasoned your way to a decision is really cool, and it gives a little look behind the curtain as to what goes into doing this, and how difficult it can be.
Yeah. Thank you for that. As we move on to number one, gosh, it was so hard this year, dude. I'll mention a few things. The first thing that I'll mention is that I do think that the list, the purpose of the list at its core is to define which cards are worth the most. And so, if we look at card ladder, the Kobe Bryant gold is worth more than the other two cards are, like by a significant amount. And I don't know, I have no idea what it's actually worth because I think, like, I understand how card ladder calculates it, and I think it's the best that you can do. But like at the end of the day, is there really an individual out there who's willing to pay that, or would that individual be willing to pay more for that, or for what what you've got the two Jordan cards ranked at? I just don't know the answer to that question. So, but I think that the method behind the valuation was the best way to go about it. On top of that, I think, and this is why I did the podcast on 2012 Prism and why I like it, which is funny because I originally didn't like it. In 2013, I was buying flawless rookies because I thought that set would matter. So it shows you what I know, right? Like and not that that's a bad set, that's a really good set, but I didn't foresee what 2012 Prism would be. Actually, I bought some and I flipped them back in 2012 and 2013, and I made a couple $100 here and there. But I kind of saw them going the same way that the totally certified greens did from a couple of years before that, which now in retrospect just seems like insane perspective. Seems like I wasn't even close. But on the Kobe, it's his first gold Prism card. And it's the first copy of it. It's the very first one. And Kobe Gold is something that is appealing to a lot of collectors right now because I think because of the Lakers. I think because people are maybe more sentimentally attached to Kobe Bryant than any athlete we've ever seen for obvious reasons that go back to this January, and because of what he represented. In my lifetime, I am sure that there's no basketball player I've watched more than Kobe Bryant. And I'm not even a Lakers fan, right? In fact, I hated watching it. But he is an icon. He is, and that legend only grows. When you think about the amount of YouTube clips there are of Kobe talking about inspirational things that will be played over and over forever. When you think about, 5 championships, which is more than the other guy that's, most loved in the league today. When you think about, 60 points in his last game and, everything from being able to watch him grow up from being a kid to who he was at the end of his career, and even the hard things that he went through and the bad mistakes that he made. Like he is just so compelling to me. And I hated watching him. I hated how he beat my Jazz. What's funny is the two players that I've collected most are the two players that I hated watching the most: Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. But I think but I collect them because I'm a basketball card fan who cares about what's important to the history of basketball cards. And so, the 1 of 10 gold it's important, and I think it's more valuable, but I don't know that. That's just a guess. So that's why, gosh, I talk so long, Chris. I'm so sorry. That is why I have it as number one. But it could very well not be number one. It was my very best guess.
Yeah. Well, again, it's awesome hearing how much, thought went into that. And it definitely speaks to all the layers of depth that this hobby has. And so as I, so like the importance that Kobe as an athlete has, And you said something that, like, I hadn't ever quite put it in those terms, but it does make sense. The sentimental attachment to Kobe now, especially, is perhaps unmatched in terms of athletes. And that's true, I think, as I scroll Instagram every day. And I see tons of Kobe posts of cards, and as we watch the playoffs, and Kobe's memory is carried on, and his legacy is carried on. And like you said, he in the unfortunate short window of post-playing career time that he had, he was a content machine, and he won awards for films that he made, and he was influential on so many different levels that he went to say he transcended the sport is an understatement. And the other thing too, so like we have and this is a good case study of this, we have a fascination in cards as well as in sports viewership to rank players based on how much they win or on what their stats are. And we do that, in baseball. The argument for Trout, which I'm not well versed in, is that he's a statistical behemoth, and he has all these MVP awards. And, even though the guy has a very limited, playoff resume, but his individual performance is just otherworldly, and it commands the market respect. And his card, I mean, he just had a baseball card, a 1/1, sell for just shy of $4 million. So this is as Josh likes to put it, this is a guy who's won, I think, one playoff game or something like that. I don't know. But okay, so there is an instance where but baseball is different. Then we have basketball, and we get so like let me take Giannis or Luka as examples. And the most common refrain that I hear about these guys, in why they're overvalued, is that they haven't won anything. And so when you haven't, that means specifically championships. Giannis has not won a championship. He has won an MVP. He's about to win his second in a row. He owns the title of the most efficient season of all time, narrowly eclipsing Wilt Chamberlain. He did that this year. So he has some things going for him on that level. It definitely applies to Luka. He has won now 2 playoff games in the NBA, although he does have a EuroLeague title and things like that. But he's won 2 playoff games, and that's it. So people look at this and they say, well, he hasn't won anything. And then you say, well, okay, well, what about Kawhi? And then they say, well, Kawhi has won things, but he doesn't have the personality. Or, we look at all these different metrics as the proxies for trying to understand a player's market. And, you get into the MJ guys, and I am one. And, we say, well, give us a metric, because when you talk about cultural, worldwide influence, especially timing wise, as the NBA was blossoming into a global sport and it was intertwining with pop culture in America, Jordan will never be, it will be impossible to replicate what he did. And then you look at brand, and you look at the cultural footprint that he's left through his sneakers and through the Jordan brand, and that will never be replicated either. And then, except maybe by Kanye West, or I guess it can happen, but it right. Seems very unlikely. And then, you look at statistical achievements, 6-0 in the finals. He has on his resume the most efficient basketball game ever played. I believe it was like a 1992 game against the Clippers when he went out for like 60-something points. He owns several of the most efficient seasons of all time, doing it as a shooting guard. He was scoring king, which, inspired the insert and stuff like that. It's like we make all these arguments about Jordan and why he matters, why he was important. LeBron has a laundry list of reasons why he matters. So many records are falling and accumulating under his name. Longevity in season 17, there's an argument to be made that he's still the best player in the league. So many things going on. And then we get to Kobe. And I'm giving LeBron short shrift there, but because I'm not as well versed in his arguments, but I know that they exist. And the thing about Kobe that's fascinating to me is that, and this happens, and this is like a piece of like hobby wisdom I think that we can all take, is that like after he retired, there is always a post-retirement window that happens to everybody where we become disenchanted. And I always go back to this Bleacher Report article that was maligned, properly maligned, that ranked Kobe. This was in the fall of 2019. It ranked him as the 14th best player of all time. It put him behind guys like Hakeem, David Robinson, Oscar Robertson, Stephen Curry, Wilt Chamberlain. They put him at fourth. The author's Andy Bailey, and he's a bit of a provocateur, but he thought it out very carefully, and he made a well-reasoned choice there, and he put him at 14. And I can say that trajectory has completely shifted. I think most people would put him much higher now on the all-time list. But it's something to think about here as we, and I think I speak for myself, a couple of other Jordan collectors too, that, we get very territorial over our favorite player and the players we collect. And it gets so bogged down into the minutia. And then here we have this example with Kobe where, okay, maybe the statistical resume isn't the best. Maybe he doesn't have the most titles, and maybe he doesn't have the same cultural footprint that others, or maybe just one other, has, but he has something different. He has a sentimental value to people that, honestly, I don't think anybody else has. I've never seen it before. I've never seen this flood of content and outpouring of love and appreciation for a player before. And it makes me optimistic about the hobby, that once again, we're sort of remaking the rules. And you don't have to have been the best player of all time. And you don't have to have had the best statistical resume of all time. And you don't have to have the biggest brand of all time to have the most important cards of all time. So that's a riff there. I know I kind of monologued it there, but I had thoughts on that topic and I wanted to express them, and this gave me a venue to do it. I wonder if you have any rebuttals or any thoughts about that.
Well, I think we're definitely of a like mind on this. I will say a couple other things real quick though, because you and I have a way of just we've got a lot of thoughts. We're already, just again to see behind the curtain, we're already way past where we were going to go, but that's cool. I've got as much time as you want, by the way. You're going to be the one to end this conversation. Definitely not me. But Kobe, so let's be really honest for a second. If you go back to December of last year and you ask me, who is the person that some people think is a good investment, but you think is a terrible investment in terms of cardboard, I would have said Kobe Bryant. He signed so much and seemed like he was going to sign forever. His rookies are from an era that's fairly mass produced. His collection extends. You and I have talked about this. His collection extends from right before the serial numbering phase all the way through the game used phase to the prism phase. And then, and like it's in everything. He's in everything. And so when you think, about guys that are good collectors, what was my saying, right? Rarity always wins. Guys that are good to collect, I should have said, rarity always wins. And so when you think about guys like LeBron and Jordan, the fact that they only have a few years of Upper Deck autographs and they haven't signed anything since then because they haven't signed with Panini, it just feels like an obvious win. Why would you ever consider collecting Kobe Bryant? You've got these guys that are really rare. I think that was the right reasoning. I think I thought about that right. And if you were to have asked me, name your top 10 players of all time, I wouldn't have named Kobe Bryant. But the thing that's happened since then is some of us are just, you said it better than I did about the sentimentality being a thing. But the way that sentimentality like changes us sometimes is interesting, because if you were to have asked me, I would have said, yeah, Kobe is probably the 10th or the 11th best player of all time. And my argument for that would have been that his first 3 championships, he had one of the greatest players of all time with him in Shaq. In his last 2, he had one of the most underrated bigs of all time in Pau Gasol with him. But like, I watched those matchups against, in the later years, and I watched the earlier years. I was there. Like, I actually met Kobe his rookie year in Utah at a hotel. I've got an amazing story about that sometime. But I wouldn't have put him so high. Now, after passing, after the things that we've gotten to hear from him, the focus on the things that he's said since his career is over, and the focus on looking back, I sit there and I go, like, this guy's, I think isn't he still 4th all time leading in scoring, 4th or 5th? I can't remember if Dirk passed him. He's either 4th or 5th all time. He has 5 championships. And why am I so quick to put other people ahead of him? Like, why would I have put Hakeem above him? Hakeem has 2 championships. Why would I have done that? That doesn't make any sense. And so I think I've let part of me that's sentimental sort of reevaluate how I look at Kobe and what his NBA career was. And then I add to it this fact that we haven't really mentioned yet, which is he is the face of the largest fan base in our sports by far over the course of the last 2.5 decades. And like, that fact is inescapable. And like, as I sat like stewing and considering all of this, in the early parts of February, I ended up in this place where I thought, like, I just need to buy Kobe Bryant cards. And the funny thing that's happened, Chris, to the top 100 list, if I was to make it as of today, just to put a bow on this top 100 sort of conversation, like, far greater number of Kobe Bryant cards make the list than is probably where I would actually want it to be. But every morning when I wake up and I'm thinking about the things that I want to look up on eBay, it's Kobe. Like, Kobe is the cards. Kobe has the cards that are compelling to me. That's why I keep buying them. And your point about like, about having like the collective gene, about how that is the thing, ironically, that leads you right. I think you're right in this way. Like, I think I'm buying Kobe because he's compelling and because he's interesting, and I'm letting that drive my behavior, still while being very smart and buying things for the right amounts and not overspending. Those principles are always true. You can't just say, I'm going to buy anything of that guy because I have strong feelings about him, right? You've still got to be selective and take the time and the energy to make really good decisions and research. But as I continue to do that, I just keep buying Kobe's, and suddenly I like look up and I realize, oh my goodness, 25 cards in my top 100 are Kobe Bryant. And I would have never guessed. And never in a million years would I have guessed that was the path that I was going to choose.
Yeah, that's amazing. I look at a lot of data every day, and I've been looking at enough hobby-wide data for a long enough period of time now to have seen a couple of different cycles, and to have seen, for example, the current crop of prospects sort of peak and then retreat, as we knew would happen as the NBA playoffs roll along. And throughout that phase, but it's even heightened more now, Kobe Bryant cards have to be characterized as the hottest cards in the hobby. And I'm talking about 5-figure cards that have realized 6x gains over 2 to 3 months. So we're seeing from that's why I love the market. The sports card hobby data tells its own story, and it tells a very important story that you just can't get from survey data. But instead, looking at market activity, it's something very different. It's sometimes a different story emerges, and the story it couldn't be more clear that I think Kobe Bryant cards are the biggest cards in the hobby right now. across generations of cards, whether it's 2012 Prism, whether it's 1996 Finest Gold Atomic Refractor, which is my favorite Kobe rookie card. Whatever it is, Kobe cards have weathered and pushed through all of these different cycles that we've seen. And, I think you just gave the cleanest articulation of why that I've encountered. So thank you for that. It's very illuminating to see a high-end collector elucidate the reasoning behind their Kobe acquisitions. And it helps us understand the market a bit better when we can sort of see into the mental machinery of, a very tasteful and seasoned collector and how and why they're buying things that they're buying. And the point about why why certain fundamentals are operational in the Kobe market that are unique to him is great, and it shows just how dynamic this hobby can be, and how like arguments that apply to one set of players don't apply to another.
Yep.
So that was terrific. So let me bring us to the conclusion here.
Wait, real quick,
Mike. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask you one question real quick?
Sure.
So, and sorry, it's your podcast. I shouldn't be asking.
Oh no! Now I'm intrigued. Let's hear it.
So, with all that said, understanding the intent of the list, if you had to rank my top three, how would you rank them?
The intent of the list is value. So, based on the best methodologies that I'm aware of to appraise those three cards, you're right. And the methodology I'm referring to is using the market growth of other highly similar cards, to project where the card that we're trying to project where it would be at value wise. Like, I definitely think that market value wise, the Kobe Prism Gold is higher. I think that's so. If that's the metric, then it wins. But I would reverse the order entirely. I would have the PMG Championship Jordan at number 1. I would have the Molten Metal Fusion at 2, and then I'm not quite sure where I would put the Kobe Prism Gold here, because you have so many great cards here. It would probably get number 3 from me. But that's because, that's me asking myself, instead of asking the way that I would go about ordering that list, it wouldn't be or the methodology that I'm using as an outsider to the collection. It's not which one is more valuable. It's which one would I buy the fastest at the value in the market. And I would snap up that PMG Championship Jordan at its market value more readily than I would snap up the other two at their current market values. And I think that the late 90s is totally overlooked from the perspective of how rare these serial numbered cards truly are. In the era of Panini, even in the era of the early 2000s Topps Chrome, and all the product, Bowman Chrome, all the products that began coming out in the early 2000s that had numerous parallels, there is a delightful simplicity to the parallel structure of the late 90s. So, for example, the 1997-98 Metal Universe Championship PMG is the only parallel to that card. There's only one parallel to it. That's it. And it's serial numbered to 50, and it's part of the PMG family. That is a level of rarity that is alien to collecting today, when, I like to refer to this a lot, but in Luka's rookie year, 2018-19 Panini products, excluding printing plates, he had around 180 one-of-ones. and that's and there's 200 Michael Jordan PMGs across all years and products during playing years, excluding the retros. So there's basically as many Luka 1-of-1s from his rookie year in the Panini era as there are Michael Jordan PMGs ever. I just think the rarity of late 90s stuff is criminally overlooked right now because we're fascinated by the parallel structure. Well, there's a out of 199, there's out of 149, there's out of 99, there's out of 49, there's out of 24, there's out of 10, there's out of 5, there's out of 3, there's out of 1. And so, these cards almost like they all have like their own little market, and they're not thought of as a cohesive unit. And there seems to be clear evidence so far that there's more than enough collectors out there to sustain the independent markets for all these cards. But when I look back at 90s stuff and I compare the rarity of it when there's just one parallel of a card and it's 50 and it's a PMG, and the market value seems to be comparatively quite reasonable, I would, without a hesitation, I would snap up that PMG at its current value.
Well, I'm going to jump in. Your perspective is meaningful to me, and it sways how I think about it. I'll add to your PMG argument that you talk about the Luka's 1-of-1. Was it his rookie cards that they're 180?
Yeah, across like all 30-ish Panini products from 2018-19.
So if you think about it, like, and with an understanding of what cards are today and of how much they cost, there's almost no Luka 1-of-1s that were pulled and not immediately like honored as incredible assets. They're almost all going to survive. The thing that's going to prevent some of them from surviving is, incidents at the post office that go, things that go wrong there. Natural disasters and things like that over years. But for the most part, those cards are going to all survive. Of those original 200 Michael Jordan PMGs, I mean, those PMGs are more likely to survive than like the PMGs of the common players because they would have been more revered since they came out. But I mean, I don't want to overstate it, but I can't guess that there's more than 80 to maybe 90 PMGs in existence at this point. I don't think it's half. I think it's less than that. And that's just a guess based on looking at serial numbers and looking at historical sort of, looking at worth point and checking and doing research on that. But, from that perspective, I think you're right. I just think that the other two, clearly the gold, the Fusion Gold, has those same principles that I just talked about and the same principles that you just talked about, but it's rarer, and it has some attributes to it that are more unique and maybe more interesting. But then the Kobe Gold, there's only 10, and so even if none of them ever do get thrown away, you only have that 10 number, and you only have one first year. And then again, the thing that put it over the top for me is that it's the very first one. So it wasn't if it had just been, I don't want to use the word just, if it had been any of the other Kobe 2012 golds, I don't know what I would have done. But being the first one of all of the Kobe golds of the Prism era, just for me, I felt like it was probably the most valuable. But anyway, thanks for riffing on my top 100 list for a while. I know it doesn't
we could go for hours, but we can't. But it's a great topic for discussion, and they're all great cards. I don't think you can. I don't think you can go wrong with that top three. It's a phenomenal top three. Okay, final topics here, and I have to get your takes on this. I get everybody's takes on these two questions, but we'll try to make it abridged here, and I'll refrain from bantering and just collect your answer. The first one is, which do you prefer? Do you prefer watching sports or collecting sports cards?
As a faithful listener of your podcast, I knew that this question was coming. that these questions were coming. I absolutely love both. Love watching basketball, love collecting cards, but unquestionably the thing that I'm more attached to is the collecting of the cards. And the thing that I think makes me different than maybe some of your other guests is if basketball stopped tomorrow, I would still love the cards that I've collected, because the majority of what I collect isn't current. Of the top 100 cards in my collection, something like 86 of them, I think, or maybe no, it's a little bit less than that. It's 83 of them, I think, are players that are no longer active in the NBA. And so for me, it's unquestionably at this point. Now, if you go back to my childhood, it might be a different answer, but at this point, it's definitely collecting cards.
Another interesting entry to that tally. Okay. And final question. It's a two-parter. And it's just a fun question here, folks. It's always controversial, but it's a fun question. And let us all not take it personally or too seriously. The question is, name one player or card that you think is overvalued, as well as one player or card that you think is undervalued. And feel free to answer those in any order you'd like.
Well, I would have said a couple of months ago that vintage was underrated. I've said that in a lot of places, and it finally has kind of caught up. I think that you could look at a lot of things in the vintage market that are maybe still underrated, especially low pop stuff. But let me just couch the answer by saying that if there's one aspect of the hobby that I believe is still underrated, it's vintage PSA DNA stuff. Cards that are rare in good condition, but are made increasingly rare by the fact that they're autographed by players who are no longer with us, players who only signed a few and who are the definition of iconic to the sport. And so, from my perspective, that's the most underrated segment. It's not a player, it's not a specific card, but it's a segment of our hobby that's underrated. The most overrated, or the most overvalued, my answer is not going to make it's going to make some people really unhappy, but I'm just going to be honest. And you can look at my collection and see that I believe this based on the fact that I've never added this. And this is the moment where I'll actually give a plug for something I'm working on. I'm working on a new project called Basketball Card Fanatic, that is a magazine that is going to this for the obsessed basketball card collector. The first issue will issue in a couple of weeks, and it has some things in it that I think some people will be really interested in. So if it's okay to plug that here, Chris, if it's not, go ahead and edit it out. But if it's okay,
no, please do. Please
okay.
Do. I can't wait for the first episode or the first issue.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to get your take on it. If you do look at it, I'd love to hear what you think. But the idea of it is to share, with the community things that I'm passionate about, and to allow other people who love to write things that they're passionate about. And so one of the articles will be about the answer that I'm about to give you, which is that I believe that LeBron James rookie cards are some of the most overvalued in our hobby. And I don't say that because I don't love LeBron. I probably have a 6-figure LeBron James card collection, and I really like LeBron. But when I think about, and you can use Card Ladder a little bit to do this. When I think about what his values are in comparison to other greats, I don't think that they're aligned properly. I do think that they're higher than they should be. Compared to others. That doesn't mean that they can't keep going up, because they could keep going up for the long term. But as you talked about earlier, every player, when they get to the end of their career, and LeBron's not at the end of his yet, by the way, because he still probably is the best player in the league. But when he does get to the end, I think that there will come a time where his values will come more in line with others, like Jordan. I think that if if you did a market cap analysis of all of the Michael Jordan rookie cards, all of the Kobe Bryant rookie cards, and all of the LeBron James rookie cards, I believe, and I haven't finished work on this yet, but this will be the subject of one of the main articles of the magazine. I believe that the LeBron James market cap on his rookie cards will eclipse the combination of Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. And I don't think that's right. And I don't think that that will win out long term. But I do think that's the way that it is now. So although I know he's got more passionate fans than anybody in the NBA currently, I think over the long term, you'll see others go up more than you see LeBron go up. How's that?
Wow. Very, very, very interesting answers on both levels. We talked a little bit about how like Kobe's the hottest athlete in the hobby, and that's, I think, empirically true right now. But the hottest category of basketball cards over the last 30 days, unequivocally, is vintage basketball. And, to your credit, this is hardly the first time that you've mentioned that category as being, a place of great value that maybe is being overlooked. And I think that's definitely coming to fruition now. Oscar Robertson rookies have 8x'd in 3 months. So, that market is booming right now. So, and then of course you narrowed it more specifically to PSA DNA stuff, autographed items from all-time greats, especially guys who may or may not, be signing anymore. Super interesting answer. And then, LeBron rookies being overvalued. Well, the thing about LeBron is, I came up with a working definition of what a prospect is. And I'm going to make an Instagram post about this one of these days and field people's opinions on it and see if I can make it better. But a prospect is somebody, generally speaking, who, if they never played another game, their card market and their card values would decline. And contrast that against, what I would say is a blue chip or something. And that's somebody who, if they never played another game, their market would stabilize or would continue to increase over time. So I ask myself this: is LeBron James a prospect or a blue chip? If tomorrow something happened, like LeBron decided I'm going to retire, would his card market stabilize and continue to go up? Because in that case, he would fall into the blue chip category. Or would it retreat? Because in that case, he would fall into the category of a prospect. And of course, that thought experiment is purely hypothetical because that LeBron is not going to do that. In fact, it looks like LeBron, if to play the probabilities, is going to get ring number 4 this year. I think there's a lot of different scenarios that can happen this season, but I think that's one of the most likely. So that's not going to happen. But the point of the thought experiment is to illustrate that LeBron seems to be perceived on the one hand as a blue chip athlete in the sports card hobby and as a prospect in the hobby. And you have two different market forces from two very different buying collectives at work. You have people prospecting his cards on the proposition that he's still adding to his legacy and that he still can play more games and achieve more things that will make his cards more valuable short-term and long-term. And then you also have people treating him as a blue chip who have the perception that even if he never played another game, his market would stabilize and or continue to go up. So it's the LeBron market is having its cake and eating it too. And it's a very interesting blend of dynamics that you just are very rarely, if ever, going to see. I think Tom Brady falls into that camp too. And that's about it. So I say is, what most players you can neatly categorize as a prospect or as a blue chip. LeBron seems to be both, and it seems to work in the direction of increasing his market. So does that mean he's overvalued? I don't know that, but that's my take on what we're seeing with LeBron's market right now.
Yeah, I think your perspective is perfect. I think that your comparison to Tom Brady is interesting. I like the idea that you have a guy um, who's both got potential and who has a legacy that's cemented. I think your thoughts on all of that is exactly right. Um, for me, I thought about this question a lot beforehand because there's clearly like rookies that are way too highly valued, and guys who you could guess are probably going to fall off a cliff, and those guys, technically from a percentage perspective, are probably way more overrated than one of the greatest players to ever play the game. But for all players, Josh from Cardboard Chronicles always likes to tell me, to stop doubting LeBron James. I won't. He's one of the greatest players I've ever seen. But every great player, for every single one, the music stops playing at some point. And when the music stops playing, even if he's got the rarest cards in the world, even if he only signed for a certain number of years, even if, whatever, things you want to say about LeBron are true, at some point, he's not the focal point. At some point, he's not the king of everything. And, according to most of us, he's not the greatest of all time. He's got half as many championships as Jordan. He will always have a very special place in the league. But the premise that his market cap across his rookie cards is, I think, more, and again, read the article, send me your email via my IG at the Real 27 guy, and I'll send it to you when it's complete. But I don't believe that his rookie card market cap should be more than Kobe plus Jordan. I know that he has the most premium rookies. I know how important he is to the sport. I get all of that. I don't believe in the long term that he will own that much of if the three were a pie, right? If Jordan, Kobe, and LeBron are a pie, LeBron owns too much of that right now. Like, I believe that. I really do. I'm not just saying that. Like, I believe that. So Adam, why don't you sell your LeBrons? Because I love LeBron, right? I just believe I believe he's too big of a piece of that pie.
Well, I keep saying episode, that issue or that edition, at volume 1, it's going to make a splash, to say the least. And thank you for teasing it here and giving the sneak preview, because I'm absolutely intrigued to find out more about this. And I know you've been researching that topic for a while. So that's going to be terrific fodder for the hobby. And it just invigorates me to think about the depth of analysis that we're now seeing on hobby-related topics like that. I mean, that level of research and analysis is certainly merited based on how strong and how valuable the sports card market is. But it's still very invigorating to see that that work is being done, and so I'm anticipating it, greatly. So, look, I said I'm going to keep this to 45 minutes, and it went to an hour and a half or even more. So thank you, man, so much for the time. I feel like we didn't even touch on a lot of the stuff I wanted to touch on. I have like half the topics we didn't even get to. I wanted to go over the top 17, I think it was, on your countdown. We only were able to do 3. So please, I ask everybody to just go browse the countdown for yourself. It's on Instagram at the Real 27 guy. Thank you for coming on, man. We'll definitely, as long as your time permits and you're willing, have many sequels where we can pick up and take on new topics. But thank you for coming on, man.
Dude, the time went by super fast. I can't believe it's been as long as it has. And your guests have been absolutely incredible thus far, and I'm just grateful. And we use the word honored pretty loosely, but I'm pretty honored that you would let me come take so much of your time and post this thing. Just grateful for it, and anytime you want me to come on, as long as I have availability, I would love to do it.
That sounds great, man. Well, this concludes episode 10 of Conversations with Chris. We will see you guys for a new episode next week.